Folks, welcome back to Keith's Garage. This winter, I'm doing something a little different. I've never worked on an outboard before, but my brain craves this stuff, especially anything with horsepower, especially a two-stroke. It's got a soft spot in my heart. I want to investigate, I want to learn more. So I bought this recently for a good deal. It ran. You can see it running there. It ran good. It started well. First pull, it fired up. And I dug in a little deeper and found that when I did a compression test here, each cylinder is maximum compression from each cylinder is 70 psi. So we're going to open it up. We're going to go in there. I need a winter project. This is a good one, I think, for me. I'm going to study all about outboards. They are funny little engines. Very different than what I'm used to working on. So get as much horsepower as we can out of this little thing. And torque. I want it. All right, so we've got the two-cylinder engine out of my little Mercury outboard engine there. I've already disassembled everything. I've given it a good wash and a scrub down, clean up all the gasket meeting areas. I've put in some new bearings in the bearing, and this is a crank front bearing support housing, new bearings and seals in there. Cleaned up the crankshaft and the pistons. Things are looking really good here. I decided to pull this down just because I just wasn't getting the compression I wanted to see out of this engine. So yeah, it ran good, as you can see in the earlier video there. But why not make it like new? Plus, I can't really leave well enough alone. I just love working on this stuff, so I'm gonna make it better, right? Why not? This sits on the engine like this. Sits inside the outboard motor like this. Your crankshaft is vertical. This is the bottom. The exhaust gases come out here and go down through the leg. It's just an inspection port. There's your cylinder head up in this area. There is no actual head in this engine. It's just a water passage that bolts on there. It's all one piece. So you can't really take the head off and have a look. The water coming out of it because I cleaned everything up. And what I've been doing right now at this moment is I've been measuring the bores to see if they're stock or if they're out of round or tapered. A high hour engine can have more wear at the top than the bottom because that's where all the action happens at the top of the cylinder. There's that little implosion there, and combustion occurs. Piston rings kind of push into the cylinder walls and go down. So you don't want any taper in your cylinder. You want to measure and check and see if your cylinder is stock bore or been overbored. So I've got a little snap T-gauge here. There's different sizes, all different sizes available here. And I take the one that this one does up to, looks like 1 1/4 to 2.5 inch. And I'm expecting a 2-inch bore. So I'm dropping down and measuring it in multiple places. I'm measuring at the top of the cylinder, at the bottom of the cylinder, at the center of the cylinder. I'm staying away from the little ports there. There's holes in the sides of the cylinders for the exhaust and intake gas and a two-stroke to go in and out of the engine. I'm measuring in multiple locations there. I gotta say, I learned and gained so much experience and confidence after rebuilding the engine in my 1938 Plymouth that this is like a great refresher, and I just feel so much more comfortable doing these types of things now. I'm bang on 2 inches. I've measured multiple locations already on both cylinders. I got stock bore. So what I'm gonna do next is put this hone in there on a drill. And I'm gonna just put a nice little crosshatch pattern in the cylinder wall. I can't see any scoring or signs of any reason why this would not make a good sealed engine again once it's sealed up with new piston rings. So I'm gonna hone it and get ready to put it back together. And I wanna squeeze as much horsepower as I can out of this little engine because I'm putting it on a inflatable boat, like a Zodiac. They call it a SIB, a soft, I guess it is, inflatable boat, soft bottom. And I'm not the lightest guy in town, but with my weight and the weight of the boat, I want to be able to get this engine up on a plane. I'm hoping 7.5 horsepower is going to be enough to do that. Put all new roller bearings in it and new seals. I'm going to do seals on the crankshaft. Roller bearings, going to rebuild the carburetor. Everything's ready to go back together once I hone it. So let's do that. While I'm here, I might as well check my bore, see if it's out round or tapered with this tool as well. This is a bore gauge. I picked this up when I was doing my Plymouth engine as well. What you do is you find the highest measurement that you can get on here and set it at 0. That's the widest part of the cylinder. It's going to be the widest it is. You get rocker it side to side in the bore there, and you move it, set it at 0, and see what the highest number is you get in a different part of the cylinder and compare it. You can go sideways, any direction you want. I'm sitting at 0 there. That's above 0 there, right. The highest number I can read is just above 0 there. And then if I switch directions, go the other way, you can't see it, but it also lands on 0. When I go on the very top of the cylinder, I'm expecting a little bit more wear in there. Looks to me like I got about a half of a thou difference from the top of the cylinder to the bottom. 1/2 of 1 thou. So what is that, 510 thousandths or something like that? Not an issue. That's a small amount. I'm going to go with that. This is an old 1981 two-stroke. It's not a F1 engine. So anyways, that's a good tool to have. Checking your bore, checking your around, checking your taper. I got a good little engine here. The biggest discrepancy I can find from the top and the bottom, or 180 degrees from side to side, 90 this way, 90 degrees, sorry, from that line to that line, any direction, is 1/2 a thou on one cylinder only. I can see that I think someone else has been in here. There's a couple of ways I can tell. This little line here is stamped with the exact same serial number on it as the leg of my outboard. So the serial number's there, and this little thing is like a lock tab, and there's a little piece of lead ball on there, and you had to cut that to get into the engine at some point. Somebody did, and I can see in this area right here, I don't know if you can see it or not, a little bit of bruising here from perhaps a failure at some point. Something just on the one cylinder. I don't think that's factory. I think somebody went in there and cleaned it up a little bit. But the cylinders look good, so let's get them home. All right, we got our honing stone here. Now, you don't need to spend a lot of time here doing this. You just want to do a light hone. You are actually taking material off the cylinders when you do this. Kind of see the lines, they go at about a 45 or so degree angle in both directions. Again, that's just to get the piston rings to seal into the cylinder nicely. In the old days, I might have put this in my kitchen sink and washed it, but my wife has completely renovated the house, renovated the kitchen, and I think she would just about kill me if I put this in the new sink. So we're just trying to make sure this is very clean. We're getting all the honing dust out of here. I've already washed it before, but again, I'm doing it again because we've just introduced new material from that honing stone. This little bottle brush works well. This is much easier than a full-size engine. These little outboards are just awesome to work on. They really are. This is a labor of love for me. I really enjoy doing this type of work, and it's a hobby. And man, it's so easy. The outboard just sits on a stand. You pull it up here right beside the workbench. It's on a stand. Take it all apart. You know, you got the music on and in a t-shirt in the garage. You know, you're not getting under the car. You're not struggling. It's so easy. Probably one of the most enjoyable projects I've done in a long time. Rebuilding this little engine. I'm going to rinse it off, start putting some two-stroke oil on everything and start putting it back together. two-stroke oil on my piston rings and in my cylinder walls and all that good stuff. Looking good. Another clue about staying out of the kitchen. There never used to be a sink or water in my garage here. But when my wife renovated the house, right on the back side of this wall here, there's a bathroom. She renovated that bathroom. And she hooked up to the water lines to that bathroom, and she gave me a hot and cold sink here, so I stay out of the kitchen. No more washing my hands in the kitchen. So I best do this right out here. If you like staying married, stay out of the kitchen. Right, I am reusing the pistons. And I just washed them. I cleaned them, scrubbed them down with Scotch-Brite, got all the carbon off, cleaned out the ring grooves. Oh, I just heard, I think there's a vehicle on the side, in the driveway. I'm expecting a part from Amazon to come today. I'm missing one piece to put this engine completely back together. Just getting water out of here. All right, so Amazon did arrive. Waiting for one bearing. There it is. So I got one locally in town here, and it was Canadian $40 for a bearing. I did my research. I should have done that before. And then I like supporting the local businesses though. And I needed to get one more. I ordered on Amazon. It was $14. So there you go. There's one in here. And one on the other end. This is ready now to go back together. We're just going to put the piston rings on, oil them down, slide them in. Just put a little bit of two-stroke oil there on everything. And a locating dowel. There's a little pin inside of each one of the piston ring grooves there. And the opening of the ring goes on the side of that. You put it towards the so when the ring closes and squishes together, it comes together on that dowel. And that way the pistons stay indexed where they need to. Each opening is about 180 degrees from each other. It sits like that when it's completed in its bore, and then the other one will be on the other side, so no kind of exhaust gases or compression gases go past the rings. If they were lined up in the exact same spot, you'd lose some power and compression. Upper dowel pin is located right there. So when I squeeze it together, it locates right on the pin. A little bit of oil comes out of there. That's nice. All right, so we got all our pistons rings in place. We'll put some drops of oil in the bottom up in this area as well. That's the upper piston pin bearings inside of there. We're going to drop some oil in there. Just putting some oil in the holes there. Just put some 105 engine grease in my bearings, and there's an O-ring here. And I'm going to grease up this bearing as well, my crank bearing. This will all get burned off when we fire the engine up. It's just going to smoke pretty good, I'm sure. But you don't want to be putting a two-stroke engine together dry. When the first fire's up and everything, it takes a little while to get the oil in around everything. So putting a little engine lube in there is not going to hurt. That goes on later. In this way. Now, each one of my cylinder sleeve inserts are tapered, so I should be able to slide these rings in there. I just got to make sure my locating dowel pins are in the right spot, and my piston ring openings are in the right spot. Yeah, I see it. There. There. What I had to do was just rock the crankshaft a little bit left and right to get the piston rings to go in. They're both in now. Would have been easier with a ring compressor tool, I'm sure. This needs to load. There's a dowel for it right there. Little inspection port here on the side. I can look at my piston rings, see what's going on. Alright guys, this is pretty important and I want to show it to you. These are little inspection ports. There's a cover that sits on that right here. Doesn't really do anything, it's just the port access to the intake side. Now, when you line up, you turn your crank and you get your piston rings lined up in there so you can see them both. The rings are now compressed in their bores properly, and you really should be checking to make sure that you're getting a little bit of movement there in the spring. When you push on it, both of them, you can feel it. It's sprung, it's in the bore. But if you're not feeling movement, it's dead and it's stuck in its bore and it's not springing like that. Something's wrong. Now, I did have an issue. One of mine didn't feel as good as the others. I had 3 out of 4 were feeling nice and sprung and really good, and one was not. So I took it back out, and what I found was on the top side of the piston ring, there's just a little bit of corrosion from condensation sitting in inventory, probably at the parts shop somewhere. From how old these rings are, I don't know, right? They sit in someone's inventory, but they could be 20 years old, it could be 5 years old, I have no idea. So I took it back out, and I just gave it a little bit of a polish with some emery cloth, and cleaned it up again, put it back in, it's perfect. So you want to make sure those rings are sitting in there and they're moving. The locating dowel holds them in their position so they can't spin, but they do need to spring in and out. As they go up and down inside the cylinder wall, they open and close like this. And they need to do that. If they're stuck, you're going to lose compression. And that was what people say when you have a stuck ring. The cylinder ring is not opening and closing. The piston ring is not opening and closing as it needs to. So those rings have to flex. Make sure they're moving. It's kind of nice that you can check it. I couldn't do that on a 4-stroke engine in my Chrysler when I rebuilt that Plymouth engine, but this is nice. So careful. Make sure you have sprung piston rings. Very important. If you don't, take it apart, figure it out, and go back in. I'm just putting a little bit of oil on all the moving parts here. Let that just kind of seep in there. Feeling pretty good. In the center here, believe it or not, on these little engines, the carburetor sits right here, and the fuel goes in right into the bottom in here. And this is a reed cage, and there's two sets of reeds. They're in behind these stopper plates here. The air fuel mixture goes in through the reeds, and they're sucked open when the engine is making a vacuum in the crankcase there and sucks the fuel in. It's pretty cool. And those reeds were in really good shape on mine. I'm not changing them. Everything's feeling really good. Yep. Crank seal in this end here. I'm gonna put this one in here. Bringing it right up to the edge there. I welded it up before I put it in. My bearings are lubed. This is the next piece to go on. And there's a couple shims in behind there for end thrust, for setting the thrust on the crankshaft. I'm putting them back in the exact way I found them. Little brass shims here, really paper thin. I'm going to put them back in just like I found it. Didn't touch the crank. I'm just going to degrease this a little bit on the outside here, wash it to make sure it's perfectly clean. O-ring back here is lubricated and ready to seal. And we're going to bolt this thing together. There's one more little important thing I want to show you here. In the bottom corner of this engine, like I said, this sits like this in the enclosure. The entire outboard leg there, drive shaft to the propeller sits right here. This little thing right here, the engine is sitting vertical like this, and a two-stroke. When you park it, and fuel may run down and collect in the bottom of this housing here, crankcase. And this little slit here actually holds the fuel, and it should get drawn back into the carburetor. It'll sit in there, and there's a little tiny hole there. You can't see it, but there's a hole that goes across, and it comes out to this fitting here. And this fitting is like a check valve. So when your engine is running, it sucks any fuel out of the bottom of the crank here and sends it back over to the carburetor. And this check valve needs to be working. If it's not, you're going to get buildup of sloppy gas in the bottom there. It may cause issues. Extra fuel that's been sitting there may run rich. So we're going to check that there's a little hole in here. Make sure that's clear. And when I spray brake clean in there, it should come out here. And it is. See it coming out? So this port is clear. Now the fitting, in theory, should only blow in one direction. I don't know if that... Oh, yeah, it's coming out of there. And if we go this way, it shouldn't come out. Correct. All right. So if that was plugged, get in there with a little piece of maybe wire and push it around. Get some degreaser in there. Brake clean through it, whatever. Break down whatever's in there. Some old ethanol fuel or something maybe corroding in there. Back in the day, I don't know, did they have ethanol in the fuel back in the 80s when they built this? I don't know. Let's thread that back in and make sure that's working. It's kind of like positive crankcase ventilation system. A little hose goes over to the intake in the carburetor. All right, we're getting close here. Button her up. All right, the final trick here at this point is because that two-stroke is a vacuum and it's also a pump. Everything has to be sealed. I now have to seal this surface, the crankcase surface. I'm using Permatex Motorsport gasket maker. This is what it's designed for, is sealing crankcases. And I want to get it around in here, but we need to make sure we go inside of these bolt holes. We don't want to be putting it out here and allowing air to potentially get in there. You want to go inside each of the bolt holes and seal it up. We're going to put a thin coat of this on there. After this cures and seals, I'm going to probably pressurize the crankcase with a little hand pump that I have with a gauge on it and make sure that it holds air. I'll probably put whatever 7 psi in it or something like that and let it sit for a while and see if it bleeds down. If you're putting a bead on, if you want to do a bead, you can. Like I said, just get it in. Make sure you're inside of those bolt holes. The crankcase bolts together. I'm going with the mass paste here. Cover it all up. This is special sealant because my understanding is it's anaerobic, meaning it can dry and seal without the presence of oxygen. So when you crank this back together and tighten it down, there's no air in there. It'll still seal properly. All right, feeling pretty good about that. It's starting to dry already. Alright, make sure my shims don't catch this. It's all clean. That feels really good. My hardware ready to go back in. Make sure those bolts are lined up on the end there too. There's a proper torque sequence here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get my shop manual and look it up. Just kind of going hand tight here now. Finger tight, just to hold everything in place. I want to get these bolts in the front bearing support housing there before I crank anything down too tight. We got the wrong one in there. Takes a long one. This little one has lock tabs on it. And they go in towards the center, like that. That's feeling pretty good. All right, I looked at the shop manual here. It says 100 inch-pounds, starting in the center, and I'm gonna go like this and rotate out. 100 inch-pounds. This little 1/4 inch drive torque wrench, I saw it at a garage sale last summer, and I thought, I'm gonna buy that. Never know when I'm gonna need it, and when you know it, I need it. There we go. Let's loosen that one off. I feel like I might have screwed that one up. There we go. I think I paid $25. That bill just paid for itself. All right. Torque these down. And I guess we'll pressurize the case. All right, this is my little pump here for pressurizing the crankcase with a gauge, and I can watch it leak down. I gotta get that hose. I gotta get this sealed off. I think what I'm gonna do is I got a plate here. I made a plate, I'm gonna drill it. It should cover the hole. I'll use maybe a piece of inner tube, a tire or something. I want to save this gasket, so I'll put a piece of tire inner tube on there. I'll drill this, then I'll bolt it tight, and that'll seal that off. I'll drill a hole in the center, and I'll tap it and put a fitting on there. And we'll hook the hose up to that and pump it. All right, here's what I did. I drilled my plate and tapped it for a pipe thread. And I got a piece of inner tube, bicycle inner tube. I'm gonna slide that over there. And here, we're gonna tighten that down. All right, here's my next trick. This is an old piece of inner tube. That's my exhaust port there. I've just built a block off sealing plate for it. A wheelbarrow tube or something like that. I cut a plate, drilled it. We're going to tighten that down. Need some washers because the studs are not threaded all the way down. All right, we've got everything sealed up now. The top plate here, plate on the intake. This is the exhaust. Now this little hand pump here with gauge is handy. I should be able to pressurize the case if I've done my job right. And I'm not building pressure. So I've done something wrong. I hear noise coming from this area when I pump it. So there you go. Separate the men from the boys here. I've made a mistake somewhere. I'm gonna maybe put some 7 pounds from my compressor in here and feed air into it steady while I spray soap around this and see what I find. I suspect it's this right here. We shall see. All right, some compressed air here. Hear it? It's coming out of the middle of the crankshaft. Guess I gotta figure out how to plug that. All right, so another piece of inner tube and a hose clamp. Let's see what happens now. Now it's coming out of here, this little fitting. Right here, just gonna plug that. Little drain fitting I told you about. I'm looking for bubbles around the seals. Nothing there. This gasket here. Along the crankcase halves. Down around this seal here. Seeing a little bit of bubbles forming there. You see that? That gasket is leaking a little bit on both sides. Here and here. I'm going to have to tighten that up, or maybe I'll take the gasket off and I'll spray with the copper gasket spray. It's good stuff. Again, checking my crankcase halves. Looking good. You're looking for the heavy foam bubbles like that. You see it here. We're holding pressure at 8 pounds. We're going to let this sit for a while and come back again and look for more leaks. Look at that one now. It's really kind of festering. Look at those bubbles. Get a screwdriver and see if I can tighten that up a little bit. Still leaking a little bit in there. Now, probably not enough to cause any problems with this engine as it's running. That's a pretty small leak, but why not do it right? Even though I've tightened it again, that's a brand new gasket. Still see it's still frothing there. The crank half is really good. Crankcase half. I don't see any signs of any leaking down at my main seals. Trying to understand why there would be air coming out the end of the crankshaft. It's hollow for the drive shaft down to the leg, but I guess, I don't know. I guess that's acceptable. I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a little research on that. But so you can see here, there's an O-ring on the drive shaft. I did a bunch of research online. I couldn't find anywhere in the parts manual or the service manual where there's anything to seal the air coming out of the end of the crankshaft. But somebody online was nice enough to tell me that some of the engines use an O-ring here. And there is a groove in the drive shaft. You can see I went through my shop supplies and I found an O-ring that fit on there. And then when I slide my engine back over top of that, in theory, that should seal the output of the crankshaft there. For some reason, they designed it so that exhaust gases or crankcase gases, whatever, can come out of the end of the crankshaft here. So here it is dealt with. Everything else looking pretty good. In here, check our gauge. We're still at 8 pounds, 9 pounds. It's not dropping. This is good. All right, I think I'm happy. other than that, definitely going to put some copper spray on there. Leave this sit for, I don't know, half an hour. We'll check it and see what our pressure is. We're currently at 8 pounds. This is my parts cleaner. I love it. It's an ultrasonic cleaner. Fill it with water. I put in some CLR this time and decided to try it. Took the carburetor completely apart, placed it in. You can see my jets there. Turn it on and it just starts making these ultrasonic sound waves and bubbles, and it's an awesome tool to have if you're into old carburetors, any new carburetors, whatever. If you're cleaning them, you just cannot beat this. I highly recommend. Hey folks, so we're pretty much gonna wrap this video up here. I have reassembled the engine completely. It is ready to go out on the water. I was really hoping to fire it up today, but when I was cleaning the carburetor disassembling, I broke a little piece of plastic linkage for the throttle. Plastic, don't know why they make them out of plastic. Whatever, cheap I guess. I ordered one, a new one. They sold me the wrong one and it's Sunday, so I guess it's gonna have to be next weekend that I fire it up. If you like what you see, please subscribe, stick around. I'm always just kind of sharing what I'm up to in my garage, things I do at home, here to look after my stuff, whether it's old cars or my ATV or my outboard engines. Who knows what'll be next? I don't know. I let my brain just go where it wants and I follow my heart. And right now it's outboard motors. I don't know why, but one thing I did want to say that I've really noticed a lot lately, it's getting harder and harder to find good data from, I don't know, it's a generational change. It's just a change in the demographic. The folks with all the knowledge on these old things are disappearing. We're getting less info. We're getting less accurate info. We're getting less facts online. When I do a Google search now for something to do with my 1981 Mercury here, everything that comes up is like a paid ad by people trying to sell you stuff. I don't have as much confidence in the info that I'm finding on social media anymore. I'm hearing people say things online that cancel each other out. They don't make sense. I'm getting wrong info. So what I'm trying to do here is preserve stuff for future generations. You know, how many people are working on carburetors these days? Not a lot. How many people are working on outboard motors from the 70s, 60s, you know, in the 80s? Not a lot. The info seems to be disappearing. I'm having trouble finding it. So I'm going to record it and share it with you. All right. Have a good one, folks. We'll see you on the next one. Keith's Garage.